in this presentation there is discussion of rape, violence, and human trafficking. So just so we're all on the same page and aware of what the topics are, I want to let you know. So thank you for coming out today. To begin this presentation, I want us to think about the place that we're in and why we can be here today. Here in the Three Village community, we have a beautiful church and a beautiful parish with so many resources and programs at our disposal. We have a beautiful school district that excels in academics, in athletics, and in extracurriculars. We have an unbelievable amount of privileges and resources in this place. And it allows us to focus on ourselves. It allows us to learn and to grow and to share and to find our strengths and our place in the world. But it hurts me to know that the safe and caring environment that I live in is only by chance. The opportunities that I have are shut out from a large portion of the population. In my community and in my school, I have value, and I know that I have value because the resources have been invested in me so that I can focus on growing myself. But so many people, especially people who are my age, who are at this critical time of growth, are treated as if they are valueless. They are not given what they need to grow. They are not given what they need to survive. Their basic rights are sometimes not even being protected. I am here today because I cannot accept that they remain valueless and voiceless. We all have the option to accept our advantages without thinking about them. But we can also decide to look beyond ourselves and our close community and ask, what does the world need of us? Because until we protect everyone, we are all still vulnerable to the ills of the world. Danger and injustice are much closer than you think. Before I began formally researching for this presentation, my mother bought me this book called Half the Sky. It's an incredible work of journalism on the oppression of women around the world and the struggles that they face, but also the inspiring stories of how they overcome those struggles. My mother wanted me to be aware of the advantages that I have and the blessing of being born in the place that I was. She wanted to show me that I have the ability to uplift and empower someone else in their society. At first, I didn't want to read the book. It was kind of long, the print was kind of small, and I assumed it was just going to tell me about all the things that I've already heard about, and I knew they were here. I didn't want to read about sex trafficking, about girls being kept out of school due to economic restrictions or social boundaries. I didn't want to read about harrowing accounts of violence and war. I thought, there are enough depressing things to think about. We have all felt overwhelmed by the injustices of the world just by reading the newspaper or turning on the TV. We all want to shut it out. We don't want to hear about it. Sometimes in this culture of dogged, non-stop work, it can be overwhelming to think of struggles that are beyond our own. It's easier to watch a newsreel about dogs than about the Syrian refugee crisis. But I decided to read the first couple of pages of this book, and I was introduced to a Muslim girl from India, and her name was Meena. When she was around 8 years old, she was kidnapped by a brothel. And and once she was old enough to attract customers, they began to sell her for sex. She was 12 and had not even gotten her period yet. The brothel owners beat her with belts and sticks and iron rods, and when she fought back, they drugged her and raped her until she felt so ruined and powerless that she gave up. But the beating continued even after that, especially when Mina or any of the other girls cried or complained about the injustice that was being dealt to them, or if they resisted in any way. Every day of the week, they were forced with 10 or more customers. And since condoms weren't used, Mina became pregnant. She gave birth to a son named Vivek and a daughter named Naina. Her children were held hostage at the brothel to discourage Mina from trying to escape. When she managed to slip out to the police, they scolded her and sent her back to the brothel. Later on, Mina did manage to escape, and with the help of an outside organization that is fighting sex trafficking in India, Mina managed to rescue her children as well, but not before they had endured years of beating and starvation and abuse in the brothel. Mina's daughter Naina had been prostituted as well. She had been raped, she had been drugged, so that when she was finally rescued and hospitalized, she suffered through withdrawal symptoms from morphine. Even after being freed, Mina and her children faced threats from other brothel owners, and they were scorned by many in their community for being associated with prostitution. But even after all that, she was not broken, and she was not afraid. Her children, Naina and Vivek, enrolled in a school, and Mina became a community organizer advocating against prostitution and helping victims recover. But often there are innumerable obstacles in the way of freedom for victims of sex trafficking. When the co-author of this book, Nick, was traveling and researching in Cambodia, he entered a brothel under the guise of being a customer. There he met a gentle girl named Mom, who was being prostituted there. He decided he wanted to buy her freedom after speaking with her, and when he negotiated with her owner, he was able to purchase her freedom for $203. $203 is less than my family spends on groceries in a week. After reuniting with her family, Mom partnered with an outside organization, American Assistance for Cambodia, and was able to open a stall in the local market so that she could get back on her feet and have financial autonomy, so she would not have to be reliant on sex trafficking in order to survive. And her future looked bright. But a year later, when the author came back to see how she was doing, he discovered that she had ended up back in the brothel voluntarily. But why? Mom, like many other sex slaves, was drugged so often that she would be compliant, and she became addicted to methamphetamines. She was overwhelmed by the need to return to the brothel to get her fix. And Mom was ashamed and devastated that she had to return. She did not want to go back, but the brothel had taken away not just her physical autonomy, but her psychological autonomy as well. Another story from the book is that of Wowinshet-Zebeni. Wowinshet was from rural Ethiopia, and she was a victim of a culture where a man who wanted to marry you could kidnap you and rape you and not be charged for his crimes if he married you, because you were no longer a virgin, so you were ruined and you had no other option. This is what happened to Wowinshet. She was kidnapped and she was raped several times by this man who wanted to marry her. And each time she was kidnapped, she had to escape on her own. Many people encouraged her to marry this man in order to avoid a dispute in the community. They shamed her and her family for fighting against this cultural norm. And even after bringing her case to the local court, her abductor still walks free. But she was resilient, and she had help from an organization called Equality Now, and Wowinshet fought for her autonomy. She brought her case to the African Commission on Human and People's Rights, and she went on to challenge this Ethiopian law that permitted bridal abduction. She has succeeded in getting that law changed. Wowinshet went on to go to high school with aspirations to study law at university, and she would like to take on cases of abduction so that even if she can't get justice for herself, she can get justice for others. When I read the stories of these people, the issues that they faced became more than just a conglomerate of disheartening facts and statistics. After I finished reading the book, I was mortified and frazzled, but I was also hopeful. I was hopeful because things were getting better, and they could continue to get better. When people who are abused and disadvantaged are given the opportunity to develop themselves, they can focus on enriching their own lives and their communities. There were many organizations and grassroots movements that I read about in the book. These organizations assessed issues and found solutions at the local level. They empowered people who were long exploited. Often, those who were once victims can become advocates in this way, like Wowinshet was, or like Nadia Murad, who was a member of Iraq's Yazidi ethnic and religious minority group. In 2014, ISIS kidnapped, raped, and sold many of the Iraqi Yazidis into slavery. Nadia was one of the people who was victim to this horrible event. But she managed to escape and found asylum in Germany. And in 2018, after working to fight human trafficking as a weapon of war, she was awarded the Nobel Peace Prize. But many people do not get justice. The book touches upon many cases of heinous sexual violence that leaves a person permanently debilitated or dead. But it is not specific to one culture. Sexual violence is in a lot of other places. It's in the ethnic cleansing of the Rohingya in Myanmar. It's in terrorist militias in the Congo, in the Middle East, who terrorize women and girls of rival groups. It's in gangs who rape and rob migrants as they flee through South and Central America. It exists on a smaller scale, right in front of us. The celebrities that we idolize, the bosses that we work for, the people in authority, like police and prison guards, in our partners, in our own family. In all of these relationships that we have, sexual violence can be present. I'm sure a lot of you know that these issues still persist. But if we know that they're here, then why has nothing changed? Why are we still surrounded by sexual violence? We are still surrounded by this problem because it's not just one brothel. It's not just one abuser who's perpetrating this problem. There is something larger at play, and we can see it if we only look closer. The issue is more complicated than sexual violence and human trafficking, though these issues themselves are very complicated. But I believe that what we are dealing with is an international culture of a struggle for power in the form of controlling a vulnerable person's body. Someone in power takes the opportunity to control another person's body. This could be through domestic violence, it could be through sexual violence, or through human trafficking, but it could also be through environmental racism, in disparities in healthcare, and access to food. It is a general trend that those whose power is being taken from them, those who are being preyed on, are femmes, which is a term that encompasses anyone who is a woman or has a feminine gender identity, Native Americans, immigrants, members of the LGBT community, and people of color, especially African Americans. In our collective society, we have learned to shut out the plight of these groups, and thus their oppression has evolved into something much more complicated than I am qualified to speak on. But if we stop looking away, the evidence is still all there. And though I will focus on human trafficking in this presentation, human trafficking is just one of the ways that the groups that I mentioned are suffering disproportionately. They're more often having power taken from them. More often they are devalued. And this is a symptom of our own negligence. These people deserve to be more than just victims of an unjust world.